How many times have you asked yourself, why hasn't it happened yet? I pray, I trust, I fight, but nothing seems to change. It's in those moments that frustration hits hardest. We start to think maybe God forgot about us. Maybe our prayers got stuck under the ceiling. Maybe there's something wrong with us. But listen, God's silence does not mean abandonment. His silence is often the soil where he prepares the impossible. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says clearly, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens." That time includes the job you wait for, the healing you need, the change you long for, the miracle you've been asking for. Nothing escapes his divine schedule. We count days, months, and years. God counts maturity, character, and preparation. While you ask, when will it happen? He is already arranging the how, where, with whom, and for what purpose. Think about this. If God gave you today everything you've been asking for, would you really be ready to handle it? How many times does a blessing receive too early turn into a burden that destroys rather than builds? The desert, the waiting, and the silence are not punishments, they are processes. And every process has a divine purpose. Moses waited 40 years in the desert before leading the people. David was anointed king, but had to wait years, facing injustice and betrayal before sitting on the throne. Joseph dreamed of greatness, but before reaching the palace, he went through rejection, slavery, and prison. They all received the promise, but they all also lived through the process. Here's the problem. We want the promise without the process. We want the immediate yes, as if God had to align himself with the rhythm of our anxiety. But he doesn't. God doesn't work on impulse. He works with eternal conviction, and that's exactly what shapes us. Because true faith isn't built when everything goes right quickly. True faith is forged when we learn to wait, and even without seeing anything, choose to keep praying, trusting, and doing what is right. So if today it feels like the answer isn't coming, take a deep breath. God's timing never fails. And when the promise is fulfilled, you'll understand why it couldn't have happened earlier, because it wasn't the right time. While you wait, do what you must. Many people think waiting on God means standing still with folded arms, as if heaven works on its own. But that's not faith, that's disguised passivity. True waiting is not stagnation. Waiting on God is movement. It's remaining firm but advancing. It's praying but also obeying. It's trusting but also acting. James 2:17 reminds us, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. In other words, it's not enough to say you trust God's timing if your life doesn't demonstrate it. So let me ask you, what have you been doing while you wait? Are you nurturing your faith or only feeding complaints? Are you investing in your heart, your mind, your relationships? Or are you letting anxiety consume everything? Waiting is the perfect time to grow in the areas you've neglected. If the miracle hasn't come yet, strengthen your character. If the answer hasn't arrived, mature your faith. If the yes hasn't appeared, keep sowing even. If you don't see fruit, it's easy to say you trust God when everything goes well. The real test is to keep walking in integrity when no one notices, when nothing changes, when every door stays shut. That's when true faith shines, when you choose to stay faithful without applause, without immediate results, without guarantees. Look at Noah. God told him to build an ark in a place where rain had never fallen. People mocked, laughed, and called him crazy. Yet Noah kept cutting wood, hammering, building, because he trusted the voice of God more than the voices of the crowd. And in the right time, the rain came. The same applies to you. Every prayer whispered in silence, every act of obedience unseen, every step of faith without recognition, it's all seed planted in the spiritual realm. And in due time, what was invisible will blossom before your eyes. Today's pain will be tomorrow's purpose. Pain has a cruel way of making us believe nothing makes sense. When your heart bleeds, when exhaustion is heavier than your body can bear, when tears won't stop, It's hard to believe anything good can come from it. In those moments, the mind screams, God forgot me. He doesn't hear me anymore. But hear me, God never forgets. His silence is not indifference, it's refinement. Romans 8:28 assures us. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Notice, all things. Not only the good, but also the painful, the confusing, the moments you wish you could erase, that rejection that broke you. It might have been the very thing that drew you closer to God, that loss that crushed you. It may have birthed a compassion you never had before, that failure that seemed like the end. It may have been the beginning of a stronger, wiser, more God-dependent version of you. This is why perspective matters. Stop looking at every delay as punishment. Stop measuring God's love by the speed of his answers. Sometimes it's not that you've failed. It's that you're being shaped, and shaping hurts. It's God removing what doesn't work, breaking patterns you didn't even know held you back, chiseling away everything that keeps you from advancing. Think of it this way. You're in a dark room surrounded by scattered puzzle pieces. To you, it looks like chaos. But God, who sees the complete picture, is patiently fitting every piece, even the ones you thought were useless, even the ones that broke your soul. One day, when the picture is revealed, you'll see that the pain wasn't loss. It was construction. So if today you feel exhausted, like you can't take another step, don't give up. This pain is not the end. It's part of the process, pulling you closer to the purpose you were born for. True faith is tested in silence. When is someone's faith really revealed? Not when everything goes right. Not when prayers are answered instantly. Not when doors open without resistance. True faith is revealed when heaven is silent, when there are no signs, when there are no answers, when everything seems still. That's when we discover whether our trust is really in God or in the results we expected to see. It's easy to trust when we understand. Harder is to trust when nothing makes sense, when the heart is full of questions and the sky feels shut. Hebrews 11:1 says, Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Do you see? It's not about feelings. It's about conviction. It's about walking forward not because you see, but because you know. Jesus spent 40 days in the desert tempted by the enemy, and not once did he hear a word from the Father. No voice, no sign, no visible comfort. Only silence, and yet he stood firm, answering with the word, resisting, trusting. That is faith. Maybe you're walking through your own desert of silence. Your prayers feel like they hit the ceiling and bounce back. You wake up hoping for a sign, but nothing changes. But silence doesn't mean God is absent. Often it means he is working differently. It's in silence that motives are purified. It's in silence that conviction triumphs over emotion. It's in silence that you learn to walk, not by what you feel, but by what you know. God is faithful. So, don't let the silence steal from you. Use this season to cling to what he already promised, because silence is not wasted time. It's the soil where faith grows stronger. Constant obedience opens invisible doors. Waiting on God's time is not passivity. It's not just saying, I trust, while living as if nothing will change. Obedience is the language of faith. It's how we say to God, I trust you even if I see nothing yet. And obedience often doesn't make sense. God asks you to keep sowing when the ground looks barren, to keep loving when love isn't returned, to keep forgiving when the wound still bleeds, to keep praying when there's no sign of response. Why? Because every act of obedience is a seed in the unseen. Think of Noah. God told him to build an ark where rain had never fallen. Day after day, he cut wood, hammered nails, endured ridicule. People laughed, called him insane, yet Noah kept going because he trusted God's voice more than the crowd's noise, and in the right time, the rain came. The same is true for you. Every right choice, every quiet act of faith, every tear shed in obedience builds something you can't yet see. It aligns heaven's plan for the exact moment. Galatians 6:9 reminds us, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." That's the key. At the proper time. Obeying when it's easy doesn't require faith. Obeying when no one notices, when nothing seems to change, when everything inside you screams to quit. That's the obedience that moves heaven. And know this, God sees. He remembers. He honors every hidden act of obedience, and in His perfect time, He will open doors that no human hand can close. What God promised never expires. One of the cruelest lies time whispers is this: it's too late, the promise is gone. As the years pass with no answers, doubt sneaks in. Maybe you imagined it, maybe you misunderstood, maybe you weren't worthy. But hear this, God's promises don't expire. If He said it, He will do it. No calendar, no failure, no change of circumstance can cancel what He decreed. Look at Abraham. God promised him a son when he was already old and Sarah was barren. Science said impossible, logic said no way, reality said forget it. But God said yes. And His yes broke every barrier. Abraham stumbled, doubted at times, made mistakes. But the promise stood. And in due time, Isaac was born. The same is true for you. That dream planted in your heart wasn't fantasy. That word you received in prayer wasn't delusion. That vision that burned inside you wasn't coincidence. It was purpose. Isaiah 55:11 says, "So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it." Maybe it feels late, but God doesn't work by human clocks. He works by eternal design. If you haven't seen it yet, it's not because He forgot. It's because He's still aligning your heart, your maturity, your surroundings. And when the promise comes, you'll see it was perfect timing. Not a day too soon, not a day too late. What God does in secret will be revealed in public. So often we despair because it looks like nothing is happening. You pray, you obey, you stay faithful, and yet to everyone else it looks like nothing is moving. But remember, God's kingdom doesn't move by appearances, but by depth. And depth almost always begins in secret. God is a master at working in the unseen. He shapes character when no one is watching. He strengthens faith in the silence of the night. He plants roots without applause. Think of David. He was anointed king as a boy, but before the throne, he was sent back to tend sheep. To the world, it looked like nothing. How could the future king be hidden in fields with a staff in hand? But it was there, in anonymity, that God prepared him to face Goliath. What God was forming in secret was revealed publicly at the right time. The same is true for you. The prayers whispered in your room, the tears no one saw, the choices for integrity when no one applauded, they all matter. Matthew 6:6 reminds us, "Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." One day what was invisible will be made visible, not to exalt you, but to exalt Him through your life. So don't despise the days of small beginnings. Don't think unseen effort is wasted, because in due time, what was planted in secret will bloom for all to see. Waiting with faith is worship. We rarely think of waiting as worship. To most, waiting feels like passivity. But in God's eyes, waiting in faith is one of the purest forms of worship. Anyone can sing when the blessing arrives. Anyone can raise hands when the miracle is already visible. Anyone can say God is good when everything goes right. But worshipping while waiting, that's real faith. Job lived this truth. After losing everything, family, wealth, health, his first reaction was not complaint, but worship. He declared, "The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." That's worship rooted not in what God gives, but in who God is. Psalm 34:1 says, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise will always be on my lips." All. Times includes the waiting, includes the nights of tears, includes the days when nothing seems to move, and when you worship in the waiting, something breaks in the spiritual realm. The enemy expects you to quit, to curse, to walk away. But when you raise your hands instead and declare, "Lord, I trust you even here," that's power. That's spiritual warfare. That's unshakable faith. Waiting with worship is declaring, "I may not see yet, but I know you're working. I may not feel, but I know you're here." And that worship rises like fragrance before God's throne. The blessings that come in God's time are the ones that last. Some blessings can be forced through shortcuts, but those blessings don't last. They're fragile, temporary, shallow. The blessings that come in God's time, however, are different. They endure, they strengthen, they remain. Proverbs 10:22 says, "The blessing of the Lord brings wealth without painful toil for it." When it's God who gives, it doesn't come with hidden traps. It doesn't bring regret. It brings peace, joy, and stability. Many people rush because they can't stand to wait. They push relationships outside of God's plan and end up broken. They chase careers or opportunities without asking God, and later realize what looked like an open door was really a trap. But what God gives, He sustains. You don't have to manipulate it. You don't have to force it. His gifts come with peace. Even Jesus waited. From childhood, He knew His purpose. He knew the cross awaited, but He didn't rush. He lived 30 years hidden in ordinary life. And when the time came, the heavens opened and the Father declared, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Everything in the right time. So if you feel ready but nothing happens, don't lose heart. God may be aligning everything not just for you, but so your blessing impacts many others. What comes too soon can destroy. But what comes in God's time builds, strengthens, and remains. When God's time arrives, nothing can stop it after. All you've lived through, after every tear shed in secret, after every prayer whispered without an answer, after every act of obedience unseen, the moment will come when God says, "Now." And when God says now, no hell can hold it back, no circumstance can block it, no closed door can remain shut. What He has decreed over your life will happen, period. Isaiah 60:22 declares, "At the right time, I, the Lord, will make it happen." Quickly, that means it may look slow, like nothing is moving. But when God's time arrives, what was stuck for years can shift in days. The impossible becomes possible, and more. When His time comes, you won't have to force doors. You won't have to beg for opportunities. Heaven itself will place them before you, so don't believe you've wasted time. Every prayer, every act of faith, every hidden seed has been recorded. None of it was in vain. God doesn't forget. God doesn't err. God is never late. Maybe you feel far, but you are closer than you think. That's why the distractions multiply. Because the enemy knows your breakthrough is near. Hold on just a little longer, and when it comes, you'll look back and say, "It was worth the wait. It was worth the trust. It was worth not giving up." Because God's timing never fails. He arrives at the exact moment, not before, not after, but in perfection. Conclusion. Silence, the waiting, the pain, the obedience, none of it was wasted. It was never delay. It was preparation. And what is coming will not be temporary. It will be eternal. The human clock may accuse you of being late, but heaven is declaring, "It's near, it's coming, trust."